So, good morning. Thank you guys all for being here. I know the initial class list said we were going to talk about appliances today. I had somebody that was supposed to come in and kind of help me with that, and she had a scheduling conflict, so we're going to do that one next Monday instead. But today we're going to talk about interior building materials. So this is still something that's really good. I hope you guys are not disappointed that you were here for appliances and are getting something else, but I promise this is going to be just as good. So let's talk about interior building materials. And really what we want to talk about is how do you understand the various features and functions of the home? This is a 4-part series, and really the overreaching theme of all of it is just understanding the features and functions of a home so that we can be better versed and more understanding of kind of what we are conveying in a home. So today we're going to talk about different types of floor coverings. We're going to understand the differences in value for the different types of countertops, evaluate some of the types and sizes of cabinets, talk about the impact of crown molding and baseboards in a home, and then establish the best ways to market those features in your MLS listing and in other marketing pieces. I will, as we go along, kind of stop and take questions. So if you guys have them, drop them into chat, and I promise I will kind of circle back and get to those. So when we talk about types of flooring, you know, we think about how many different kinds there are. So we have hardwood, we have laminate, we have vinyl or linoleum, we have porcelain or ceramic tile. And I understand that those two are different, but we kind of put them together for the purposes of tile. We have sealed and stained concrete, we have natural stone, and then carpet. Excuse me. Okay. So the first kind of flooring that we talk about is hardwood. Now, true hardwood flooring is different than laminate hardwood flooring, and we're going to talk about the differences here in a second. But now we're talking about the real hardwood flooring. So some of the pros, it has a very good ROI. It looks beautiful, it's very versatile, and it's pretty easy to maintain, right? So hardwood floors have been in homes for over 100 years, and some of the hardwoods that you'll find in homes from the 1910s and 1920s still have original hardwood floors in them. So they tend to last quite a long time. Some of the cons, they can scratch and dent. They're definitely more expensive than most of the other types of flooring, and they can be noisy. So typically if you walk through an old home, it gives you that idea of almost being haunted because the floors will creak and kind of whine as you walk through them. So they can be noisy. Hardwood flooring usually comes in 3 varieties: strip, plank, and parquet. So depending on the era of time that you're looking at, hardwoods have kind of gone through these variations, basically. So the individual segments in wood strip flooring are usually 1.5 to 2.25 inches wide. So within these hardwoods, you're actually going to have little strips that are laid together to make these hardwoods. The plank flooring, the strips are wider, and then the parquet floors are composed of individual squares that make up a geometric pattern. And on the next slide, I'm going to show you what all 3 look like. Unfinished hardwood floors allow the homeowner to finish the product with a stain that matches their decor. So this is actually something that has become fairly popular in about the last 10 years or so, is you get hardwood floors put in that are unfinished. And then at that point, the homeowner, especially in some of the new construction and things like that, the builder will just put in unfinished hardwood floors, and then it can be sealed once you decide, do you want cherry or oak or maple or, you know, all these different shades and colors and different things like that to match what you have going on. So the strip, like we were talking about, is comprised of those 1.5 to 2.25 inch boards that are laid together. The planks are a little bit wider. Normally they're 4 to 6 inches. And then those parquets were really popular in the 60s and 70s, that you had these square tiles basically that were strips of hardwood laid almost in offsetting angles and things like that. And they were really popular for a while, and they have kind of gone away. So we don't see parquet floors as much as we used to. When we talk about laminate, so this is where it gets to be a little bit difficult for people, because a lot of homeowners, especially if they didn't put the floors in themselves, they're not sure whether it's a laminate hardwood floor or an actual hardwood floor. And honestly, sometimes it's hard to tell. Some of the pros of the laminate is it's very easy to install. As you can see, they kind of clip together. So they have kind of a tongue and groove normally. So they just pop in and then sit together. They're very easy to maintain and they're less expensive than hardwood. Some of the cons are they are prone to water damage, and we're going to talk about why here in just a second. They're very difficult to repair, and they have a very hard feel underfoot. So when you walk on it, it's very solid, and it's not always very soft or comfortable to walk on. So laminate flooring will look just like hardwood, but it doesn't behave like hardwood floors. Laminate can faithfully reproduce the look of wood, stone, and other materials at a distance. When you get to looking at this laminate floor, you're going to notice that they're perfect. And if you know anything about wood, you know that wood is never perfect. So real hardwood has those imperfections, pieces that need to be discarded or trimmed, whereas laminate is absolutely perfect. Every board is of consistent quality and appearance, and they've done some things to the laminate, so it's not as bad as it was 15 or 20 years ago. They've added some embossing, which makes it look a little bit more like wood grain. But what they do is they actually use a very, very thin veneer of hardwood over a core. So that core is not actually hardwood. It's usually made up of some sort of composite material, wood pulp, or different things like that make this laminate floor. As a result, because it's just that very thin veneer over the top, that core can be damaged by moisture. So this is not a good flooring to use in bathrooms or kitchens or things like that, because that moisture can actually damage the laminate flooring. Now, the laminate flooring similarity really disappears when you look closely at them. So the laminate has pattern repetition. It's going to have, for most brands, about 5 to 10 different patterns of board that get repeated, essentially. Some of the cheaper brands only have 3 different board patterns. So if your installer's not paying attention, you can actually have 2 identical boards laid side by side, which looks very unnatural. As a result, it also, because of that core and things like that, it needs to acclimate in your house. So what they do is they deliver this floor and you set it in your house in the boxes for about 3 days to be able to adjust to the relative humidity and all of these things to be able to make it fit in your home. Otherwise, what'll happen is if it doesn't have a chance to kind of season into your home, you'll get some of that warping and distorting, whereas it expands or constricts, or contracts rather, that flooring will actually not fit exactly right once it gets laid. So it's just a few things to understand with laminate flooring. For example, when you have floors, you notice how on the picture on the left-hand side, all of the direction of flow, oops, oh, my camera, all of the direction of flow is the same. And that's not really what you want when you're laying hardwood floors. Now, most of these installers know this, so they do a pretty good job of kind of correcting for it. But with laminate, it can be done kind of a DIY project. So if it's somebody who doesn't really know what they're doing, this is something to kind of pay attention to. On the picture on the right, you'll notice that it has kind of this hump that's caused by the flooring being installed too tight at the walls. So it actually kind of pushes it up because it hasn't had a chance to really expand. All right, so let's talk for a second about vinyl flooring. Now, vinyl flooring is newer. I'd say probably in the last maybe 15 or 20 years has really kind of popped on as a viable flooring source. The cool things about vinyl is it's moisture resistant, so it can be put in kitchens, bathrooms, different places where hardwoods or laminates might not be a great option, but you still want the look of kind of a wood floor or a stone or tile, something like that. You can now have the option for a vinyl flooring. Most of these have commercial grade wear levels. So what that means is it doesn't show wearing, like a lot of some of your laminates and things like that, in high traffic areas, you're going to notice that wear, whereas in vinyl flooring, you don't see that as much. It can be used on multiple types of subfloor. So vinyl is cool in that, let's say you have tile and you're like, I really don't want to rip all this tile up. You can actually lay the vinyl flooring right on top of the tile and you won't notice. You may have a little bit of a step up from whatever the other kind of flooring is because of the difference in height. But for the most part, you can use different kinds of subfloor and put vinyl right over the top of it. You get a variety of colors and styles. It's very low maintenance, and there are options for just about any budget. So vinyl flooring is kind of a good, versatile floor that's general purpose. It can use throughout the house and work really well. Now, some of the cons of the vinyl flooring is it's difficult to remove if it gets glued down. With vinyl, you can have what's called a floating vinyl floor, or you can have a glued vinyl floor. If it gets glued down, it is a bear to try and take up. So just understand that's one of the cons of it. It can be punctured by sharp objects. So if you have this in a kitchen and you drop a sharp knife, you can actually gouge or gash that vinyl flooring. Some may dent with heavy items. So if you've got heavy couches or entertainment centers, over time, some of these vinyl floors may actually dent. And then when you move that object, you may have to replace that part of the vinyl floor. And they may fade or discolor over time because they are printed. So kind of understand that. Now, we're not talking about grandma's linoleum. Vinyl flooring, a lot of times when you're thinking of vinyl flooring, you're think of like the 1950s grandma linoleum. And this is not the same thing. This is great for high traffic areas because it is completely water resistant. It's really good for kitchens and bathrooms and things like that. Some of them do have that rigid core construction, which make them more dimensionally stable and sturdy. If you drop something sharp like a kitchen knife, it is possible to scratch or tear the vinyl, which can also happen from sliding a metal chair leg on the floor. So just understand that there are kind of pros and cons and limitations with each of these types of flooring. Now, the cool thing with the vinyl is it can look like absolutely anything you want it to look like. So like the bottom left down here, you can have a very cool looking wood floor that's vinyl. So it's sealed, it's waterproof. If you have aquariums or you're using it in high traffic areas, then you don't have to worry about it fading. You can do some of these cool tiles like we see in the top left two, the top left and the middle one. They can also do some dimensional ones like you have in the bottom right. They can make it look like stone or marble, some of those things up in the top right. And they also have some really cool print. So it almost looks like a printed marble floor that you could put into an entryway or something like that. So just understand that with this type of flooring, there are a lot of options. There's a lot of cool looks and things that you can really do with them. Now, let's talk for a second about tile flooring. So porcelain and ceramic tile, while they're not the same, we're going to kind of lump them together for the purposes of this demonstration. The pros, they're very durable. They're impervious to water and stains. They're non-allergenic. So that's something else to really be aware of is if somebody has an oak allergy or a maple allergy, true hardwood floors could actually be an allergen for someone. Whereas with porcelain tile and even the laminate, they're non-allergenic. So that's something just to be aware of. You have many design options, which can be cool. Now, one of the complaints that you typically get with ceramic or porcelain tile is it's very cold. So if you use them in a bedroom, you get out of bed on those cold winter mornings, which doesn't happen very often in Florida, but we get them from time to time. You can have very, very cold feel when you get out of bed. And a lot of people really don't care for that, especially in the bedrooms. It could be very hard underfoot. So again, not a lot of give, not very soft, not very cushiony. It's just a very hard tile. The other thing is they're very heavy. So some of these tiles can be extremely heavy, which could be a limitation depending on what your subflooring is. And it is both difficult and time consuming to install. Now, what I'll tell you guys is when it comes to tile, your installer will make all the difference in the world. There are a ton of installers that'll do laminate and hardwoods and vinyl. but finding a very good tile person is more difficult than you would imagine. Now, when it comes to those tile floors, they're relatively easy to care for. You know, they don't require a lot of upkeep, a lot of maintenance. They do need to be grouted, and that grouted will need to be cleaned and sealed fairly regularly. It's very durable and not impacted by moisture, which makes it a good option for your kitchens and your bathrooms. It's a very tough material that doesn't crack, but in the event that one does crack, it's pretty easy to just pop the grout out, take that one tile out, put a new one down, re-grout it, and you're good to go. So they're pretty easy to replace. It does allow for designs. So in hardwoods and laminates, you're very limited on the type of design that you could put in a room. As I mentioned, the installation does require somebody that's very well trained, because I can tell you guys, not all tile installers are created equal. When we did the tile in our living room, we interviewed 3 different tile guys before we finally settled on the one that we liked, because they just, it's very difficult for somebody to be able to do it right, and it makes all the difference in the world. And it may not be ideal for upstairs or homes that are, like if they have a crawl space or something below them, if it's not a cement slab, because the weight of that material can actually cause problems into the subflooring and things like that. So just something to be aware of when you're talking about floors specifically. Now, when it comes to tile, they're just beautiful. We put a tile in our living room that looks like kind of driftwood. So we have kind of a very beachy, very coastal feel in that room, because again, everything in our house is scuba divers and sharks and mermaids. So, you know, that's kind of the feel that we have in our house. So we actually elected to go with a wood grained tile rather than doing like a vinyl or a laminate flooring. Again, because of the versatility of this, you can have some really cool patterns, and you can create some unique, like here in the bottom left, you can do some accent pieces with smaller tiles and things like that to really help and elevate a space and kind of create some contrast. They can also, like this one, they can be laid at an angle rather than laid straight. So you'll notice that, you know, you get kind of a dimensional feel to a room. So there are some really cool things that you can do with tile to just allow for a different look or a different feel than you could accomplish with some of the other types of flooring. Now, the next one we're going to talk about is natural stone. So this is going to be your marble, your granite, your slate, your travertine, okay? And I'm kind of putting all the natural stone together because honestly, I could do a class on each of these. Some of the pros are they're very unique. They can be used in any room, and they're typically non-uniform. So you're not going to get that very, like, I've got 5 wood strips, and it's going to be those same 5 repeating throughout the room. Now, the flip side to this is they can be very, very heavy. Granite, slate, travertine, marble, they're all heavy stones, basically. And because they're non-uniform in shape and size, especially with slate, they can potentially become a trip hazard or a slip and fall hazard. So marble, you know, some of these homes, especially in Europe, you notice that marble flooring is a very big thing. And a lot of people love the look of marble floors, but it's not without some give and take. The same with granite. Now, I personally love slate floors. I think they are the coolest looking flooring ever. But because it's non-uniform, because it is a naturally occurring stone, it does have some limitations, and the same thing with travertine. I saw a question pop up here. Let me see. Where did my question go? Oh, sorry guys, I don't know where my chat went. There it goes. Okay. There used to be a lot of terrazzo floors, and you don't hear much about them, and that's exactly right. Terrazzo is something that, again, it kind of ran its course for a while. It was something that a lot of people loved, and then it just sort of was like, it was a phase. Nobody really wanted it over time, so then it kind of went away. Now, terrazzo floors are beautiful as well, and, you know, they stick cheap laminate over terrazzo, which kills me, but, you know, again, this is kind of what we run into when we talk about real estate, and especially trends in real estate, because what we have and, you know, what's really popular today may not end up being popular 5, 10, 20 years down the road. So it's kind of that trade-off between go with what's trendy versus go with what's kind of timeless and classic. Now, this is a type of flooring that we don't see a ton, but I absolutely love. And it's stained and sealed concrete. So some of the pros, it's relatively inexpensive, it's extremely durable, it's easy to maintain, and there's a ton of design flexibility. Some of the cons, it's very hard and cold, it can be slippery, it is susceptible to moisture, and it needs to be sealed about once or twice a year. So another point of note, and I'm going to show you guys what this looks like because you may or may not have ever seen it. It may cause an issue with FHA or VA financing. So if you have a home that has stained and sealed concrete, understand that it may cause a problem with FHA, because FHA says that all floors must have floor covering, okay? So the floor must be sealed in order for it to qualify, because then it is technically an actual floor covering, not just exposed concrete. So just understand, you may have an FHA appraiser that comes into a home that has stained and sealed concrete floors and go, oh, well, it's got exposed concrete, it's not FHA acceptable. So just something to be aware of. It does require a bit more maintenance than some of the other types of flooring, but when properly cared for, guys, these floors will last forever. The first time I actually saw this type of flooring is when I was working in a veterinary hospital. They actually had these sealed concrete floors in the entire practice, and they looked absolutely amazing. So even in high traffic areas, it lasts a really, really long time. But if you get liquid on it, because it is sealed and waxed basically, it can get a little bit slippery. So something to be aware of. So this is exposed concrete, or this is sealed and painted concrete flooring, basically. Now, the cool thing with concrete is no matter how well it's laid, there's always going to be dimension, there's always going to be color variances and things like that. So you get some really cool aspects of flooring. Now, like here in the bottom right, they can actually put patterns and things like this in your concrete as they're sealing it and staining it. So you can get some absolutely beautiful effects from this type of flooring. All right, and then we'll talk about carpet. So carpet is inexpensive, it's softer, it's quieter, it hides dirt, it's easy to install. The cons, it shows wear and tear much more than a lot of the other types of flooring. It does require maintenance, and it can only be used in certain areas. You're not going to put carpet in your kitchen, in your bathrooms, because that's just a disaster waiting to happen. There's a debate about whether or not carpet helps or aggravates people with asthma and allergies. So I've heard both sides of this. My wife has really bad allergies. She took an allergy panel out of the 58 things that they tested her for. She was allergic to like 46 of them or something. So the first thing the allergist told us was we need to rip the carpet out of our house. So we did. But now there's a bunch of studies on both sides that actually say that in certain cases, because of the way that the fibers are in the carpet, they may actually help people with allergies. So in all of this, there's no right or wrong. I can't tell you whether it absolutely does or absolutely doesn't help or hurt people with allergies. Just understand the jury's still out. Nobody really knows right now. Excuse me. All right. Some of the newer brands of carpets actually have protectors, so stain fighters in the fabrics that allow it to be stain resistant and wear resistant. So they don't wear quite as badly as they used to if you're buying some of the higher end carpet. Now, if you're getting the 79 cents a square foot carpet, it's not going to have this stuff in it probably. It's still going to wear. Now, it's not good in areas of high humidity or when it's likely to get wet. So again, if you've got areas where you want to put fish tanks or things like that, carpet's probably not your best option. And then the carpet will need to be replaced more regularly than other types of flooring like laminate, hardwood, or tile. So just understand it's got pros and cons, there's limitations to it. But the cool thing is with the way carpet is emerging, there's so many textures and colors and styles and piles. You know, pile is how tall that that berber is in the carpet. So you have some like the one here in the middle and in the top left that are very, very small pile. Some of them are thick and woolly and bushy and just more comfortable. When it comes to carpet, it's all a matter of preference. So as with all things, and even really with a majority of the types of flooring, there is no right or wrong type. It's just a matter of what you prefer, what you really want to go for, and what the aesthetic of the room that you want to accomplish really is. So many types of flooring with varying benefits and challenges. There is no one perfect floor, okay? That's the big takeaway here, is there is no one flooring that is perfect for every room, perfect for every person, and ultimately it comes down to preference. You know, what is the application, the room, the need, or the taste preference of the person that's going to have that flooring? You know, it may be that I love tile floors. I actually like that it's cooler. But somebody else may go, oh no, I hate tile flooring because I don't like having cold tile under my feet in the morning. I want carpet in my bedroom, or whatever the case may be. So just understand that I want to give you guys a baseline of understanding what some of the pros and cons of the different types of flooring are, so that if you get into a situation where somebody asks you, hey, you know, what is a laminate flooring? Like, what does laminate mean? Well, laminate is actually a very thin veneer of wood floor that gets laid over a composite core. So while it looks like hardwood, it really isn't hardwood. You know, that way you guys can speak intelligently to the different types of flooring and just have kind of a baseline knowledge and understanding of what it really is. Now, it can sometimes be difficult to tell the difference between cheap flooring and expensive flooring. And what I mean by that is you can have some very, very nice laminate flooring, bamboo flooring, things like that, that end up looking and working extremely well in a room. Some of the vinyl flooring is the same way. It can be inexpensive, right? But when you look at things like tile, for example, sometimes the difference between a cheap tile and a very good tile has nothing to do with the price. So that's where it gets to be a little bit difficult, is price is not always the whole story. There's some hardwood floors that are exponentially more expensive than some of the laminate or vinyl counterparts, but don't really look any nicer and may not actually be the best fit. If you have dogs, hardwood floors probably aren't the best option for you because those dogs are going to scratch up that hardwood floor. So it may be that you have a $10 a square foot hardwood floor that's going to be absolutely destroyed because of the type of lifestyle that you have, as opposed to a $2 a foot laminate flooring that may actually look and live much better with your lifestyle. So I hope that makes sense. What do you guys have in terms of questions so far for the different types of flooring? I'll pause here for a second. My question thing is not popping up. Let's see. We used to put heat under the tile. Do they still do that, like in the bathrooms by the shower? They can. Absolutely. So you can have kind of heat strips that are put under some of those tiles, so you can actually have heated tile floors. That is still something they do, especially in bathrooms. So when you get out of the shower, you know, that area outside your shower is actually heated and warm. So yes, that is absolutely still something they do under tile. It's a very good question. Does anybody else have any questions before we move on? And Wendy says, can you talk about floating? Okay, so floating floors. Essentially what floating floors mean is it goes in, so you've got your subfloor, whether it's an underlay or something like that, and then they actually take this vinyl flooring, and they do it sometimes with laminate flooring as well. They actually just put the flooring in wall to wall, but it's not actually attached to anything. So it's not connected to the subfloor. It's not glued down. It is just wall to wall. So it's held in place by the fact that it has a wall on either side of it that keeps it there. But that's called a floating floor. So it literally is actually just floating above that subfloor with nothing holding it in place. Now, because some of these floating floors can be a bit problematic, that's when you'll start to see kind of the peaking, I guess is I can't think of the actual term for it. But you'll notice that some of the floors kind of come up to a point and things like that, because over time they may stretch or they may even restrict a little bit. So now you're going to have like these half-inch spaces in between boards, because the way it was done, when it goes wall to wall, all of a sudden now it dries out, and because it's not actually glued in place or not actually held in place, it can actually come apart, or it can start to kind of bow together. So,
Hey, Greg,
yeah.
do you mind if I add something there?
No, absolutely, please.
A part of a floating floor is that that's why installing them, you have to be a half an inch away from all the walls, because the
Right.
floor does flex and move. So what the mistake some people have is that they install the floor all the way to the wall. So it doesn't give the floor, that's what causes that peak. And yeah, that's what destroys the floors. Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate you adding that. So yeah, that's kind of the thing of when you're talking about floating floors, just understand that your installer really should know, like what Edwin was talking about, that you need to leave that little bit of space on the side and things like that to be able to make it be the most effective. So it's, as with all things, it's just one of those things you need to know. And if it's something that you are doing yourself, then just something to be aware of. All right, so next we're going to talk about countertops. And this is kind of interesting because there's a lot of theories, there's a lot of misconceptions. But in terms of countertops, we usually think granite, corian, laminate, and quartz, probably. But there's actually 10 main types of countertops that we primarily see in homes. Granite, soapstone, marble, quartz, solid surface materials, ceramic tile, laminate, wood or butcher block, stainless steel, and concrete. So we're going to talk about these 10 types because some of them are newer, things that you're going to see. Some of them are very old and things that we don't see as much, but we want to be able to have kind of that baseline knowledge. So we'll start with granite, because granite is the one that we hear the most and we kind of feel like we know the most about. So granite is extremely durable. It's almost impervious to heat. It definitely adds value to a home. You have nearly 3,000 colors and types of granite at this point, which just absolutely blew my mind. It's nearly maintenance free when it's treated with newer sealants. So granite I would say, is kind of the gold standard of kitchen countertops in the US especially. Now, some of the cons to it is granite's pretty expensive. It requires an expert to install. It can crack if it's improperly installed, and it does require sealing to avoid staining, okay? So granite is actually a stone that is mined out of the earth. And typically, like in this bottom right-hand photo, it's brought out in slabs. So they get cut into slabs, and then from there, they get installed into the home, okay? Now, granite, because it does come in slabs and it has to be cut, it has some of these, I'll call them fault lines, but you'll have these different things in here where you can see different veins and things like that. But depending on your length and your space, sometimes they have to put two slabs together and you have a seal line. Depending on the quality of your installer and things like that, some of those seals are very, very obvious. And it can be I'm trying to be careful on how I say this. Granite is very difficult to install properly, but when improperly installed and those seals and seams become very obvious, it can detract from the value of that granite, okay? The next one is soapstone. Now, this is one we don't see a ton, but they have it in certain parts of the country that you'll see it more. We don't see it a lot in Florida, but it's a really cool type of countertop. So it has a deep, rich color. It is somewhat stain resistant. It's fairly impervious to heat. Any damage can be sanded out. It offers a historic or an antique look to a kitchen. So we see them a lot in like colonial style homes, especially in New England and things like that. You'll see kind of soapstone. Some of the cons, it can darken over time. It has to be installed by a professional. It has to be regularly treated with a mineral oil. The surface can scratch or dent, but sometimes that creates a unique look. So I'm going to show you guys what this looks like, so you kind of get an idea, and then I'm going to pop back a slide. So it's kind of a gray to black color. It typically has some veining and things like that. In a lot of cases, they actually pair a soapstone countertop with a different type of material. So sometimes you'll see like an island that has soapstone with maybe a granite or something like that around it. Now, it's normally only found in very old homes, but it's lately kind of reemerged as an alternative to granite. Again, in Florida, we don't see it as much, but it is kind of popping up as an HGTV trend, which means it's inevitable that it's going to get here eventually. It's a cool way to make a kitchen have a very historic feel while using a newer stone. While scratches can occur, it does give it that unique look to the patina of the stone. So to some people, that's actually part of the charm. And the stone ends up telling that story over time. So like I said, it is a newer, well, it's a very, very old style that is reemerging as a new style. So you may start seeing it again, and that's why I wanted to kind of add it to the list. The next one is marble. Now, marble had a run where it was marble everywhere, and then granite kind of became the gold standard after marble, and now quartz, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. But with marble, some of the pros, it is waterproof and heat-proof, because again, it's a stone that gets mined out of the earth, so heat's not really going to bother it. It does add value to a home compared to some of the laminate and some of the others. It creates a very unique look in a space. So there are some things that you can do with marble countertops that you can't really achieve with many other types of countertop, okay? Some of the cons, it's very expensive. It has to be installed by a professional. Marble can be scratched, and so as a result, it gets very difficult to repair. And because marble is a porous stone, it does stain very easily. And there's not a great way to be able to seal marble like you can granite and some of the others. So marble has a beautiful look to it. Like there's nothing like a marble countertop, but it is not without its limitations. All right, so let's talk about quartz. Now, one of the most common questions that I have been asked as a real estate agent is, what is the difference between quartz and granite? Okay, and we're going to talk about that. So some of the pros to quartz is DIY installation is possible. You can actually put in your own quartz countertops. It is very easy to maintain. It requires no sealing. The slabs are uniform with no imperfections like we sometimes see in granite and marble. It can be custom fabricated for any shape and size, and we're going to talk about that. It resists stains, and it's impervious to heat and acid. Some of the cons is it's expensive and it's very heavy. All right. So let's talk about what quartz is. Okay. Quartz. So the quartz countertops that we have are not the same quartz that we quarry out of the earth. What it is it uses about as much as 93% of those quartz particles. So they mine that quartz out of the earth, they ground it down into a powder, basically, and then they essentially pour that into slabs. So while it is quartz in that it is the stone, it's actually rendered down to a powder and then laid out, engineered into these slabs. Now, because it's engineered, the possibilities for colors, patterns, different things like that are truly almost endless. if you can think about what you want it to look like, they can make a quartz countertop look like that. It can be made to look like granite. It can be made to look like marble. It can be made to look like stone. The possibilities are truly almost endless with quartz. And as a result, this is why quartz has now become the gold standard for countertops in the United States. Because it's non-porous, you don't have to worry about stains or heat or anything like that. And it doesn't have to be sealed like granite. Just because it's taken this powder, it's mixed with this other 7% of material, which is sometimes filler or resin or something like that. It actually gets poured and sealed. So you can literally take a pan right off the stove, set it on your quartz or your granite, you're not going to hurt it at all. So it's a really, really cool material. And as a result, it can be made to look like just about anything. So you'll have some like this that made to look like granite. You have some that can be made to look like marble. You have some that can almost have like a wood texturing to it. They can make it a solid color. They can make it just about any color, actually. And you can make it to fit whatever the aesthetic that you're going for in a given space. So it's extremely versatile, just kind of a really cool material. But understand that it is 100% engineered. Now, one of the other things, and I was going to touch on this, and I just kind of remembered it as we're talking about it. When you get quartz countertops, they will actually go in and measure the space that you have, and they will actually make this into one solid piece of quartz. So you're not going to have seams, you're not going to have anything like that. They'll actually pour this out of one solid piece. So it can be L-shaped, it could be kind of a U shape, and they can still pour that as one solid piece. It can be whatever size, it can be whatever depth, it can be all these different things because it actually gets engineered for the space that you have. So that's one of the other advantages of quartz is you get one solid piece, no seam lines, no anything like that. It's just true solid slabs, which is kind of cool. And it's perfect. You're not going to have any pits. You're not going to have any divots. You're not going to have anything like that because it is poured out of particles. All right, so let's talk about solid surface. So this is going to be your Corian, your Swanstone. I mean, there's a bunch of different brands, but in essence, they're all solid surface countertops, okay? They resist staining. Any damage is easily sanded out. It's available in a ton of colors and patterns, but it can be moderately expensive. It is vulnerable to damage from hot pans. So you've got to use pot holders and things like that. You can't set hot pans on it. And it has to be fabricated and then installed by professionals. It was originally introduced about 50 years ago as a space age alternative to natural stone, which they were made to resemble, okay? So at the time in the 1960s to early 70s, Corian and some of these others were like, holy cow, this is futuristic space age kind of materials. But as the cost of mining granite and things like that have come down, it kind of lost that space age appeal. And it was once regarded as a premium luxury countertop. Now it's kind of a mid-tier. So Corian countertops are better than laminate. They're still not as valuable as your granite or your quartz or some of the others. It is still a very good alternative to granite, especially in homes that have a lot of counter space. So if you've got something with like huge wraparound counters and a giant island in the middle, granite would be very expensive to cover all of that space. So Corian might still be, and I use Corian as the main example, but sandstone and Swanstone rather, and some of the others. They can also make sinks out of the Corian, which is kind of cool. So you get an alternative to a metal sink. This kind of shows you the different colors and patterns and things that you can do. So it is still a viable alternative to granite, though understand if you were doing a renovation, you're not going to get the same return on investment out of Corian or Steron or some of the others that you would out of a granite or a quartz. So just kind of understand all of these things play a place, but they are going to have differing returns on investment. Now, ceramic tile. Now, this is one that kind of, it runs its phase for a while, and then it kind of phases out, and then it comes back, and then it goes out again. Ceramic tile is very easy to clean. It's usually pretty affordable. It's easy for DIYers to be able to construct. It's immune to heat from pans, and it comes in tons of colors and patterns. Okay, so ceramic tile. Some of the cons are if you want custom tiles, it can be very expensive. So it could actually be more expensive to have custom tiles made than to have quartz made. The tiles are brittle and may crack under impact. So if you put something extremely heavy on it, you could actually crack the tile. Because they are tile, they do have to be grouted. And so those grout lines can stain and are very difficult to clean. And it doesn't carry the same prestige as granite or quartz. Okay. It is a potentially cost-effective and easy to clean material. It's less expensive than natural stone, quartz, or solid surface. With recent innovations in the porcelain tile specifically, you're given the option of a lot more designs than you ever had before. Some of these tiles can be made to look like marble or wood or even leather or cork. So there are some really cool tile options out there. If you look at it, you get a lot of this patterning. So you'll see in the top left, you get these tile patterns. So you can actually put it into your backsplash and into your countertops as well. You can do some cool patterns. You can do some cool accents, even coordination in this bottom center photo between kind of the mermaid scale or fish scale backsplash with these kind of aquamarine tiles on the countertops. So it can be made to add some cool aesthetic to a space that you wouldn't be able to achieve otherwise. Now, laminate. Laminate is kind of the very entry-level, least expensive option for countertops. So it's easy to maintain. You have thousands of options, easy for DIY installation, and it's pretty inexpensive. Some of the cons, the seams are always visible, right? So as they come together, there's just no way. The laminate is a certain size. Your seams are always going to be visible. They may be viewed as low end by buyers. So if somebody walks in and sees laminate countertops, they're going to go, okay, this house maybe is not as valuable as another similarly equipped home that has granite or quartz or even marble. The custom edges can add an expense, so it helps make them look better, but it can be a bit more expensive. And it can be scratched or chipped and is nearly impossible to repair. So again, some of these laminates look beautiful. They have laminate that looks like sandstone. They have laminate that looks like granite or looks like marble or looks like wood. So you can get a look in a space for a lot less money, but understand that you probably are not going to get that same return on investment that you would if you were using an actual granite or sandstone or quartz or marble, something like that. Now, wood or butcher block. This is something that has really popped up as a popular trend in the last few years. It's relatively easy to clean. It's long lasting when it's cared for. It can be sanded and resealed, and it offers a very quaint country look to a space. Some of the cons is it can be fairly expensive. It can get scratched by cutter knives because it's just wood, so you can actually chip it or scratch it by cutting on it. It can be damaged by water or get stained over time. Bacteria can become a problem in it if it's not properly maintained, and it is subject to cracking if it doesn't get sealed and oiled frequently. So butcher's block is something that we're starting to see quite a lot. It's just a wood countertop, but butcher's block kind of, to me, is a bit misleading because when you think butcher's block, you're like, oh, okay, I can cut on it, I can butcher on it. But in reality, you really can't. It's just kind of the name for these wood counters. So they are a very popular trend now, but understand that they do have some limitations. And then stainless steel. So stainless steel is impervious to heat damage. It's excellent for modern style kitchens. It's the easiest of all countertop materials to clean. It is regarded as premium. It adds real estate value. It can be made to fit your space so you have no seams, and it can include your backsplash. So when you think about some of the highest end kitchens in restaurants throughout the world, they all use stainless steel countertops, and it's for a reason. Some of the cons is they're very noisy. So if you drop something on a stainless steel countertop, it's going to be noisy. They are very expensive, and they are easily scratched. So stainless steel is not a cutting surface. We would see this a lot in commercial spaces, but by and large, it's really becoming a very popular option, even for consumer spaces as well, so homes. As a result, now you can have kind of this pounded look with stainless steel, which I really, really like, much more than kind of this flat industrial kind of feel. But understand that this is a very premium item. So it's not something that you're going to walk in and go, oh, you know, this is very cheap. It's never going to feel cheap, but it will sometimes feel industrial to a buyer. So it's not for everybody. It really depends on the space and things like that. But we're finding in a lot of like $1 million homes with like chef kitchens, they're actually going to stainless steel countertops. Now, the other one with the picture in the center in the middle here, picture in the middle in the top, there we go. Your counters and your sink can all be integrated into one piece. So again, this is something that you're going to take measurements in the space, and they are going to fabricate these to fit exactly into the space you have. So no seams, no issues like that. It's all going to be one solid piece. And like I said, they can integrate into this backsplash like you see in the middle picture, and even in the bottom right down here. You have kind of a stainless steel backsplash as well. Because of the nature of stainless steel, it is very easy to clean, very easy to maintain kind of a sterile or a semi-sterile environment. So it is becoming a popular new trend among countertop options. And then one of the last ones is concrete. So you can actually have concrete countertops. And again, this is one of those trendy things. We see it a lot in the Pacific Northwest right now. It hasn't really made it to the South yet, but it's starting to kind of pop up. Excuse me. The concrete can be color tinted, so it can be made to, coordinate with your counters and things like that. Okay. It is heat and scratch resistant. It can give you a very exotic and unusual look because it's something that people are not used to seeing. You can get decorative textures and colors, but some of the cons are cracking may occur over time. It is still concrete. The cost is high due to the fact that it is a truly custom piece. The surface is porous, so you do have to regularly seal your countertops because, again, concrete is porous. And it may appear industrial and not right for everyone. But when you look at this, I mean, how beautiful are some of these countertops? It is truly unique. That's the same granite I saw in the last 3 houses we walked in. This is going to be something that is truly unique and individual. So just understand that this is something that is custom, kind of one of a kind. So if you have a house that's very unique, you might see something like a concrete countertop. So that way you guys can kind of see what it is and what it looks like. Do we have any questions about countertops? So Diane said, what holds the value at this time, quartz or granite? Quartz is I would say the preferred, but there's still people that love granite. So those two materials specifically are going to probably have the best return on investment than any of the other types of countertops that you could use. So I would say whether you go with granite or whether you go with quartz, I think it's still a good investment. I think that it would be a very good return on investment for you. So you won't really go wrong with either one. If it were me, I would actually go with quartz because it doesn't have to be sealed. It's perfect. You don't have any of those imperfections, and it can be made to look like just about anything you want. So if you went in and said, hey, I've got white cabinets, and so I want kind of a gray and blue and black, they can actually go in and take those particles and make it look exactly the way you want it to look. Whereas with granite, you've got to go actually look at the slabs to find one that's going to coordinate the best with what you are trying to do. So you have a lot more versatility with quartz than you do with granite, but people still love granite. Like when you say, oh, it's got granite, people are like, ooh, right? So there's still that aspect to it. And that's a very good question. Do you guys have any others before we move on? Oops. All right. So let's talk about types of cabinets. Now, I'm not going to spend a ton of time on cabinets, but I do want to just let you guys kind of understand some of the differences in the styles and kind of give you some of the vocabulary. So styles of cabinets, the first one is shaker. So this is the most common style of cabinets that you're going to find in a home. They are the most sturdy and long lasting. They're most commonly made from cherry, maple, hickory, and coarse oak. They're very versatile, so they can have a traditional or contemporary design, and they're not as trendy as some other options. So let's talk about what makes a shaker style cabinet. If you look at the photo, you're going to notice that it has 4 edges with a flat panel in the middle. So that is the defining characteristic of a shaker style cabinet. It's going to have 4, almost like a picture frame with a flat piece in the middle. It can have different styles of hardware. It can have all crazy kind of varieties, but that is the definition of a shaker style cabinet. Then you have louvered cabinets. Now, we don't see louvered cabinets as much in the US, but it is a very popular trend in other parts of the world. So it has a very unique feel. It is very expensive. Again, in Europe and even in parts of South America, it may not be as expensive because it is kind of the more standard. But here in the United States specifically, it tends to be very expensive. It's good for cabinets that are near dryer vents or pantry cabinets or other areas that benefit from ventilation. So again, in Europe specifically, they would have kind of the washer and dryer in the kitchen. So your dryer vent would actually vent in your kitchen, whereas in the United States, we tend to have laundry rooms or laundry areas that are in the garage, those kinds of things. So we don't see this as much, but every once in a while, you'll see a louvered style cabinet. The next one is called a flat panel or a slab cabinet. And this is very stylish. It's very minimalist, but it could be considered trendy to some buyers. So it's not as classic and not as timeless because people are not as used to seeing it. And the cabinets don't have frames. So like when we talked about with the shaker style, they are actually framed with a piece in the middle. This is just one solid slab of wood. And that's how it gets a flat panel or a slab. That's how it gets its name. It is one solid piece of wood that is made into those cabinet doors or drawer fronts. Then you have what are called inset. Now, it is sometimes difficult to tell the difference between an inset cabinet and a shaker style cabinet. So sometimes they get used interchangeably, but technically an inset is actually a door that is set inside the cabinet frame rather than outside. So this deals more with how the doors are mounted to the actual cabinet itself, okay? So these doors tend to be set inside rather than outside. They're built using incredibly precise measurements to ensure proper fit. So as a result, they're very expensive. So let me go back. You look here at this inset versus the shaker style. And these are kind of set outside the frame, whereas the inset is actually set inside the frame. So it's a little bit different and kind of weird, but just understand that you're going to see inset cabinets in very high-end and very expensive homes. Yeah, I'll turn that down just a little bit. And then you have distressed. So distressed kind of gives it a very antique styling. It kind of looks very European. You're going to see this a lot in kind of older styled homes or things that have that type of look. They're typically 15 to 20% more expensive to have someone distress your cabinets. So what that means is if I were looking at cabinets, I would put the original cabinet in there and then I would have them distressed after the fact. You can actually buy cabinets that are distressed while they're being manufactured. And typically they are going to still be about 15 to 20% more expensive than a non-distressed cabinet, basically. So understand that as a return on investment, this is something that, depending on the styling of your home, might add significant value. If you had kind of older cabinets that you wanted to just do something different, you could have someone come in and distress those cabinets, and it would be a significant return on investment for you. Then you have what are called beadboard. So they're made of rows of vertical planks with ridges known as beads, and they're great for cottage or farmhouse styled homes. So you're going to see this when you have a lot of like cottages, you're going to see this style of cabinet, because this is what people think of when they think of like farmhouses and old, especially out west. When you think about old kind of, excuse me, sorry. Think about like old, the old farmhouses, you know, it's set on 80 acres with a farmhouse in the middle kind of thing. This is what you expect those cabinets to look like. So this is a new trend that is really starting to pop back up again with like these vintage style stoves and vintage style refrigerators. They're made to look like the old 1940s and 50s stoves, but they're actually brand new technology. So it's kind of cool, something different that you could put into the right style home. Then you have what's called thermofoil. So thermofoil is molded from a medium density fiberboard and then wrapped in a plastic coating and baked under intense heat to seal it all in. So they come in solid colors or in wood texture imitation, and they are an inexpensive option for cabinets. This is kind of what you would call like an IKEA cabinet, something that you're like, oh, okay, that's the best way that I could describe it, would be like an IKEA style cabinet. That's a thermofoil. Now, custom is always an option. So you, in the same space, you could get prefab cabinets, you know, cabinets that are made on a certain size and certain depth and things like that. Or you could, depending on where you are in the process of building your home, you could actually put custom built cabinets into the home as well. So over here on the right, it would be very hard to find a prefab cabinet that would work for this space. So you would instead choose to do something more custom. Obviously, custom is very expensive, but if you've got a very high-end home or something like that, understand that custom cabinets may make all the difference in the world for that particular space. So when we talk about cabinets, understand that they may be solid wood, or some may only be solid wood on the front and on visible sides. Some of the cabinets use particle board on the hidden sides and on the back to help reduce the cost. So if you do have a home that has solid wood cabinets, it is important to notate that in your marketing, solid wood cabinets, because again, it's something that adds value that a lot of people don't necessarily pay attention to or don't realize unless we were to point that out to them. Cabinets have different quote unquote standard sizes. So sometimes you have 32-inch cabinets or 42-inch cabinets. There's still a prefabricated size but it may be more desirable to have 42-inch cabinets than 32-inch cabinets or 36-inch cabinets. And they may be custom made to fit a particular space or shape. All right, so we're almost done. Do you guys have any questions about cabinets, about the different styles or different shapes, those kinds of things? I'll give it just a minute. No? All right. So let's go into crown molding and baseboards. Okay, so this is something, especially as I've worked with investors that have done a lot of flipping, I have learned more about baseboards and crown molding than I ever thought I would ever want to know, okay? Baseboards go along the bottom of the floor. Those are the ones that are at the bottom. Most are 1/2 to 1 inch thick and can be anywhere from 3 inches to 8 inches tall, or 3 inches to 8 inches high. Your standard baseboards are typically 3 to 3.5 inches. When you start going into the 5-inch or the 7-inch or the 8-inch baseboards, those are the ones that are going to be very, very tall. And you're going to find those typically in higher valued homes. At least that's the perception. So those 3-inch baseboards are what you see. But here's the challenge you run into. If you've got an older style home that only has, maybe 7 or 8 foot ceilings, you won't necessarily want to do 8-inch baseboards on an 8-foot ceiling because it's going to make that wall look very squatty and short. So there's some things you've got to kind of factor in when you're looking at what type of baseboards or whether or not you would want to use crown molding in a space. So to give you some ideas, there's a million different styles of baseboard. Sometimes you have ones that are just truly flat. Some of them have this kind of texturing at the top. Some of them have kind of a ridging. And then what a lot of flippers are doing is they're actually leaving those 3-inch baseboards, and they have this 5-inch style or 7 or 8-inch style that actually pop right over the top. So you don't even have to take the other baseboards off. It's kind of a cheater's way to do it, but if you had really nasty or grungy baseboards that you were afraid were going to strip the drywall out if you took them off, you could actually put some of these baseboards right over the top of it and replace a 3-inch baseboard with a 5-inch baseboard and give it a totally different look. So again, just kind of understand that there is no one set style or type or whatever when it comes to baseboards. You really can convey just about any type of message that you really want in the style of baseboards that you choose to use. So this is just a very small example of the shapes and sizes and things like that that you could get with baseboards. So you have some that are just very flat. You have some that have, like I said, some of this nice texturing at the top. You have some that have kind of almost this beading at the top. And then you have some that are taller and different things like that. Now, the crown molding goes on the top of a wall along the ceiling. It's a good way to add flash to a room, but this is typically not something that we're going to see in every room of the house. Typically, you're going to see your baseboards, or your crown molding rather. You're going to see your crown molding in rooms with taller ceilings. So things like living rooms or great rooms, dining rooms sometimes, you're going to see them there. You might see them in a master bedroom because, again, you want to kind of add some pop, but it's not something that you'll necessarily see in every room of every house. Now, again, just like with baseboards, there are a million different styles of crown molding. Some of them can have textures in the bottom. Some of them actually can round out. So it kind of takes the sharpness of the corner of the room and actually fills it with a space like this rounded texturing. Again, you're going to see it more in kind of your formal areas, your entryways, your master bedrooms, things like that. And even sometimes in the corner, you'll have your two baseboards that come together, and then you'll have these kind of decorative pieces. What's interesting is when you have somebody putting in baseboards, you have to make sure that your angles of the baseboards are cut properly so that they actually fit together into that corner. And what a lot of times will happen is they'll use these corner pieces to help mask the fact that the corners weren't cut properly. So they have this decorative piece they can stick over the top, and they're like, oh, all of a sudden now it looks beautiful because they weren't cut right. So this is the one reason I've never gotten into baseboards and crown molding, because it seems like I can never get the angles cut exactly right. All right, so let's talk about some of the takeaways from today's class, okay? The biggest thing I want you to understand are the differences in those features and how to properly showcase them. So if a home has upgraded baseboards or crown molding, make sure you talk about that in your public remarks. Because again, it's something that people may not notice in the photos, but it's something that you want to make sure that they're aware of. Many agents don't know the differences, and honestly, many buyers probably don't either. But in us being those listing agents, we're expected to be the expert. So understanding the difference between quartz and granite, and marble and stone and concrete and carpet versus tile versus, you know, all these different kinds of floors. We want to be able to present ourselves as the expert to be able to talk about it. Now, I have had sellers who are like, oh, we have hardwood floors. And I was like, are you sure you have hardwood floors? And they're like, absolutely. We were told when we bought this house, it had hardwood floors. And in reality, it's laminate flooring. Now, that's not to say that laminate is not as good as hardwood. In fact, in many cases, it's actually preferable. But even in the home that we bought, we bought it as a short sale, and the sellers were like, no, you've got hardwood floors. So we were cleaning them as though they were hardwood floors. And then all of a sudden our floors got really glossy and kind of weird looking because we were using hardwood floor cleaner on a laminate, and it's not the same. So we actually had to have our laminate floors resealed because we were told that they were hardwoods. We were cleaning them accordingly, and we were told incorrectly. So in your public remarks, make sure that you showcase those items: crown molding, upgraded baseboards, granite, quartz, whatever those things are. Make sure that you show those things, because again, it could be the difference between why a buyer would choose your listing versus somebody else's. A lot of agents just don't understand what these features are, so they don't do a very good job at showcasing them. So that's really what I wanted you guys to be able to take away from today's class, is understanding that there are differences and there are pros and cons to each style, and being able to properly showcase those differences to be able to have the most impact and to be able to really get those homes sold. So do you guys have any questions before we kind of wrap up here? So let's see, they said, is there a good way to know for sure what kind of floors and countertops without depending on the seller? That's a good question. So I have always been told that specifically between granite and quartz, because there's not a great way to know, because some of the quartz is actually made to look like granite. I'd always told if you touch it and it's cold, then it's granite. Whereas if it's not cold, it's quartz. That works most of the time. But there have actually been ones that I felt, and I'm like, oh, it's cold, it must be granite, and then it was quartz. So the short answer is no, there's not a great way to know. One of the ways you can tell, especially with the flooring, is looking at the pieces, like the room, crap, why can't I think of the term? The pieces that join the two types of flooring together. If you look at that, sometimes you can pop that up and look at it, and you can tell whether it's a laminate, because you'll see that it has a kind of a veneer over the top, and then you'll see the core underneath, versus an actual hardwood that would be one solid piece of wood. That's the easiest way that I've had to be able to tell, but no, the short answer is there's really not a great way to be able to go, oh, that's definitely quartz, that's definitely granite, that's definitely marble. we're kind of at the mercy of the seller in those cases. So that's a great question. Does anybody else have any? No? All right. Well, I hope that was valuable. I hope that you guys got some good information that you're able to take away from it. And then next week, we will circle back to the appliances. So we had to do a little bit of a switcheroo, but you know, we will come back to that next week. And if you guys have any questions, if there's anything we can do for you, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, make it a great week, and we will talk to you again soon. Have a great day.